ॐ
ॐ
गणानां त्वा गणपतिगुं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवस्तमं ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां ब्रह्मणस्पत आनशृण्वन्नोतिभिस्सीदसादनम् ॐ महागणाधिपतये नमः। सद्यो जातं प्रपद्यामि सद्यो जाताय वै नमो नमः। भवे भवे नाति भवे भवस्वमां भवोद्भवाय नमः। वामदेवाय नमो ज्येष्ठाय नमः श्रेष्ठाय नमो रुद्राय नमः कालाय नमः कलविकरणाय नमो बलविकरणाय नमो बलाय नमो बलप्रमथाय नमः सर्वभूतदमनाय नमो मनोन्मनाय नमः। अघोरेभ्यो घोरेभ्यो घोरघोरतरेभ्यः सर्वेत सर्वेभ्यो नमस्ते अस्तु रुद्ररूपेभ्यः। तत्पुरुषाय विद्महे महादेवाय धीमहि तन्नो रुद्र प्रचोदयात्। ईशान सर्वविद्यानाम् ईश्वरः सर्वभूतानां ब्रह्माधिपतिर्ब्रह्मणोऽधिपतिर्ब्रह्मा शिवो मे अस्तु सदा शिवोम्। नमो हिरण्यबाहवे हिरण्यवर्णाय हिरण्यरूपाय हिरण्यपतये अम्बिकापतये उमापतये पशुपतये नमो नमः। ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमामस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादशङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। ॐ मन्दस्मितमुखाम्भोजं महनीयं गुणर्णवं मधुरा भाषिणं शान्तं सर्वभूतदयापरं भक्तवात्सल्यं चलतिं परमानन्दविग्रहम् ज्ञानानन्दं प्रपन्नोऽस्मि निर्मलज्ञानसिद्धये. See, in the last session, we spoke about bhakti, the aspect of bhakti. See, bhakti is a joy. In bhakti, there is no asking. And in bhakti, we seek Bhagavan alone. That's why bhakti becomes a joy. And in bhakti, the duality disappears. In bhakti, we are not separate from Bhagavan. Like how the flower and the fragrance cannot be separated. It's always one. In bhakti, you are in oneness with that divinity. So there is no two in bhakti. And the duality is transcended. And that's what happens when the bhakta seeks Bhagavan. And in Shiva Ānanda Lahari, Adi Shankara Bhagavatpada presents the oneness, the Advaita, in a simple way and in a subtle way. So Shiva Ānanda Lahari has 100 verses which takes us to Shiva. When he says Shiva, Shiva is the end. Shiva means the end. And there is nothing beyond Shiva. And that Shiva is the Hetu. Hetu means a reason for Sarva Karma Nivrittihi or Sarva Samsara Nivrittihi. When I say Samsara Nivrittihi, it is the annihilation of Samsara. And this is what we saw in the previous session. And this session, we will begin the first shloka in Shiva Ānanda Lahari. The first shloka is a very beautiful shloka. It's a dhyana shloka. In this dhyanam, we are visualizing Shiva and Parvati as the divine couple, universal couple. There's nobody like Shiva and Parvati. So that's how Shankara visualizes in this dhyana shloka, looking at Shiva and Parvati as in the form of Ardhanarishvara. Kalabhyam Chuda Alankrita Shashikalabhyam. Kalabhyam Chuda Alankrita Shashikalabhyam Nijatapa Palabhyam Bhakteshu Prakatita palabhyam astoka tribhuvana shivabhyam hridi punarbhavabhyam ananda spurata anubhavabhyam shivabhyam me yam natihi bhavatu kalabhyam chudalankrita shajikalabhyam nijatapa palabhyam bhakteshu prakatita palabhyam bhavatu me shivabhyam mastoka tribhuvana shivabhyam hridipunar bhavabhyam ananda spurad danubhavabhyam natiriyam.
Kalabhyam chudalankruta shashikalabyam nijatapa palabhyam bhakteshu prakatita palabhyam bhavatu me shivabhyam astoka tribhuvana shivabhyam hrudi punar bhavabhyam ananda spuradanu bhavabhyam natiriyam.
So in this Dhyana Shloka, Shankara Bhagavatpada is offering namaskaram to the divine couple. And while doing this salutations, he praises the divine couple as the embodiment of art, Kalabhyam. Let us understand what do you mean by embodiment of art. See, when you look at the universe is changing every moment. Something new is appearing every moment. It is self-creating and it is also very innovative, isn't it? And as humans, we are just the observers. We are not just the observers, but we are participating in the cosmos. See, you can imagine this universe as a beautiful art, which is self-creating, and we human beings are participating in that living art, and we derive certain personal meaning to it. And while deriving the meaning, we also understand our place, we also try to understand our place in the universe. Correct? So here Shankara Bhagavatpada is calling this divine couple as the embodiment of art, which essentially means the embodiment of knowledge. See, the creation is pure intelligence. And that intelligence is this divine couple, Shiva and Parvati. Like, for example, like how painting, see, you got a painter, you got a dancer, or a singer, or somebody who's sculpting images. For such people, whether it is painting, dancing, sculpting, or singing, it becomes a spiritual practice. They connect with the art form very deeply. And as a viewer, if you're watching the performances, you also connect to the artist. Correct? You also connect yourself to the artist. In the sense, everything becomes one. It's a deeper sense of reality. The consciousness, divinity, everything becomes one. You know, the dancer, the dance, and the person who is viewing the dance, all of them become involved. All of them become one. And how do you describe that oneness? That oneness can be described as pure intelligence, isn't it? And in the similar way, you look at the universe is changing every moment, it is changing. It is self-creating, it is a piece of art. And we as humans look at the universe not as observers, but as participants. And we try to find our position in the universe through this observation. And in that process, you become one with the universe. You become one with that intelligence. And that's how you understand this Kalabhyam here. So Shankara, he says, my namaskaram to this divine couple, Ardhanarishvara, Shiva and Parvati, who are embodiment of art. And both their heads are adorned by the crescent moon. Not only that, both of them are the fruits of mutual penance. That Parvati is aspiring for Shiva, Shiva is aspiring for Parvati. And this is what is called as mutual penance. And the devotees of Shiva and Parvati who worship them in such a form, the divine couple bestows bountifulness to them. They bring auspiciousness to the life of the devotees. They bring auspiciousness to all the three worlds. And they appear repeatedly in the heart of the devotees. Let us understand what do you mean by repeatedly appearing in the heart of the devotees when we go into the shloka. So Shankara summarizes this Dhyana shloka as that Shiva and Parvati are not something, not someone who are distinct. They are not a distinct entity, but they are continuously present in the heart and the minds of the bhaktas, the devotees. So that is the essence of this shloka. And this shloka is composed in the Shikarini meter. So we spoke about Shikarini in the previous session. Until the 27th verse of Shiva Ānanda Łaɦᶏᶏήᶏήᶁả, it is composed in Shikarini meter. Shikarini means a peak. And there are 17 syllables in every line or a pada. And in this shloka, you can see certain syllables repeating continuously. For example, Kalabhyam, Palabhyam, Shivabhyam. So these are appearing continuously. So in the composition, this is called as Yamaka. Yamaka. See, Yamaka is a figure of speech. It is like an alankaram, where certain words which are similar in sound but different in meaning. See, when you say Kalabhyam, Palabhyam, Shivabhyam, they sound very similar, but the meanings are different, and this aspect is called as Yamaka. See, normally in the compositions, you will see different types of Yamaka. They say, they talk about Padanta Yamaka. This is repeated at the end of the line. The similar sounding words are repeated at the end of the line, which is Padanta Yamaka. In certain compositions, which are complex, there are large scale repetition. It is called as Mahayamaka. And certain times, in certain compositions, you got garland of repetition, which is called as Mala Yamaka. So here, understand this Kalabhyam, Palabhyam, Shivabhyam as Yamaka, which is a figure of speech. So in this composition, Shankara Bhagavad-pada says Natiriyam. Natiriyam. When I say Natihi means Namaskaram. Salutations, Namaskaram. Namaskaram to the divine couple. My Namaskarams to you. Who is this divine couple? Shivabhyam Yam Natihi. Shivabhyam Yam Natihi. When you say Shivabhyam, it indicates the divine couple, Shiva and Parvati. And Shiva and Parvati are described in different ways. And there are 7 descriptions of Shiva and Parvati which is said in this composition. It starts with Kalabhyam, first definition. Then Chuda Alankrita Shashi Kalabhyam, which is the second definition of Shiva and Parvati. Then the third definition is Nija Tapa Palabhyam. Fourth definition is Bhakteshu Prakatita Palabhyam. The fifth one is Astoka Tribhuvana Shivabhyam. Then Hridi Punar Bhavabhyam, which is the sixth definition. And Ananda Spurata Anubhavabhyam. So 7th one. So there are 7 descriptions of the divine couple Shiva and Parvati Shivabhyam. And the Namaskaram is being offered to that divine couple Shivabhyam Yam Natihi. My Namaskarams to the divine couple Me Yam Natihi. Me means my, iyam means this, namaskaram, bhavatu, me iyam natihi bhavatu Shivabhyam. The two divine the divine couple who are auspicious, let it be my bhavatu me iyam natihi bhavatu Shivabhyam. So 7 types of description, and we'll go through this description one by one. So Shivabhyam yam natihi. So the first description of the divine couple is Łaɦᶏᶏήᶏ. When you say Łaɦᶏᶏήᶏ, so as I described, Shiva and Parvati are the intelligence in the creation. They are this embodied knowledge in the creation. Like I said, how this painting, dancing, singing, sculpting becomes a spiritual practice. And that connects the artist and the viewer to a deep sense of reality. And the universe is so complex. Lot of patterns in the universe, lot of different structures in the universe which keep changing every moment. And the patterns in the universe are described as an art, which is similar to an art. And everything is held together by one cosmic principle. And this cosmic principle is Ardhanarishvara, which is the cosmic intelligence. So Łaɦᶏᶏήᶏ is the definition. When you say Łaɦᶏᶏήᶏ, the divine couple is the cosmic intelligence. And that cosmic intelligence becomes the wealth of the universe, Aishwarya. And that Aishwarya is auspiciousness, which is Mangalam. And that auspiciousness is Shiva. And this is the definition of Kala. Kala. See, the Devi is also known as Kala Rupini. And this is the first description when you take Shivabhyam Yam Natihi. So Łaɦᶏᶏήᶏ is the first definition when you take Shivabhyam Yam Natihi, my namaskaram to the divine couple who are Łaɦᶏᶏᶏ. Then the second description, Chudalankrita Shashikalábhyam. Second description. So when he says Chuda refers to the shika on the top of the head. See, you would have heard of this jewel called Chudamani. Chudamani. Mani is a jewel, and the jewel which adorns the top of the head is Chudamani. So here Shiva adorns the moon on his head. The Devi also adorns it. So Chuda Alankrita Shashikalábhyam. So both of them adorn this crescent moon as an ornament. As an ornament, decorating their tresses, their hair. Shashikalábhyam. Shashikalábhyam is the crescent moon. Chuda is that hair, the tresses of the hair. Alankrita. Alankrita means what? Decorated. So who have this beautiful crescent moon decorating their heads. And this is the second definition when you take Shivabhyam Yam Natihi, I bow down to the divine couple who are what? Shashikalábhyam, Chuda Alankrita. Chuda Alankrita Shashikalábhyam. And that becomes the second definition when I say Shivabhyam Yam Natihi. And the third definition is Nijatapaha Palabhyam. Tapa Pala. Tapa Pala. Tapa is tapas. Palam is the result of the tapas. The outcome of the tapas. So both Parameshwar and Parvati obtained each other through mutual tapas. The husband wanted the wife wanted the husband. They did mutual penance to acquire each other. And that is the aspect of Nijatapa Palabhyam. Parameshwara obtained Parvati and Parvati obtained Parameshwara based on tapas, fruits of mutual penance. Shivabhyam yamnati paraspara tapas sampat. So nijatapa palabhyam is the third description. See, in Kalidasa's Kumara Sambhava, so it's just an imagination of Kalidasa. He describes how Parvati obtained the name called Uma. Parvati is also called as Uma. How did Parvati get the name Uma? So it is his imagination, his visualization. And the story goes on like this. So Parvati is born as the daughter of Łaɦᶖヴᶏ, the king of the mountains. And Łaɦᶖヴᶏ's wife is Menavati. And Parvati is born as a daughter to them. And she undertakes, or she decides to undertake an intense, rigorous penance or tapas to win Shiva as her husband. So from the very young age, she goes into very severe, or she undertakes severe austerities. And her mother is watching this daughter. Oh, the daughter doesn't eat, she doesn't sleep, always in the state of penance, tapas. It's very difficult for the mother to see the daughter in such a condition, isn't it? Painful penance. And her mother, Menavati, she is overwhelmed. She is filled with sadness, worry for the daughter. Some amount of discomfort. Whenever she looks at the daughter Parvati, she has this discomfort. And one day she cries out at her daughter, always in the state of tapas. What do you say? You say, ooh, why are you doing this? And she says, Ma. Ma means don't do it. Ooh, Ma, she says. So, ooh is just a particle, signifying exclamation. She is addressing her daughter as ooh. And she says, don't do it, Ma. And that's why Parvati obtained the name called Uma, and that is Kalidasa's imagination in Kumara Sambhava. So Parvati obtains this name called Uma. Coming back to this shloka, Nijatapa Palapyam. So both Parameshwara and Parvati are united always. They obtained each other through mutual tapas. Nijatapa Palabhyam. And Kalidasa also says, Vagarthaviva sampriktau. Vagartha pratipattaye jagata pitarau vande Parvati Parameshwarau. So Kalidasa addresses Shiva and Parvati as the divine couple, the foremost couple of the universe. Only through them, the universe is born. And we are children of Parvati and Parameshwara. And that Parvati and Parameshwara are inseparable like a word and its meaning. The word and the meaning cannot be separated. And that's how he describes Parvati and Parameshwara. Vagarthaviva sampriktau, Vagartha pratipattaye jagatappitarau vande Parvati Parameshwarau. So this Nijatapa Palabhyam, Shivabhyam Yamnati, is another description. This is the third description of the divine couple. I bow down to the divine couple, my namaskarams to them. Nijatapa Palabhyam, who obtained each other through mutual penance. Then the fourth one, Bhakteshu Prakatita Palabhyam. Bhakteshu Prakatita Palabhyam. And what is this divine couple doing? They are engaging themselves, always fulfilling the wishes of the devotees. They want to fulfill every wish of the devotee. Bhakteshu, here people who worship them. And the divine couple show their bountifulness to the devotees, to the bhaktas. See, normally, the couples fight with each other. There is always some sort of misunderstanding. It happens. It is very natural, isn't it? In husband and wife, tend to have some arguments now and then. And just imagine a situation where the wife and the husband are joined together and they have got only one mouth. Just imagine, only one mouth because they're joined together. And whenever they want to speak, they speak in unison. And that is the aspect of Ardhanarishvara. They always speak in unison. There is no misunderstanding between the couple. They want to shower the devotees, the bhaktas, with bountifulness. They want to throw their compassion at them. So let it be my bhavatume, bhakteshu prakatita palabhyam bhavatume. And that is the fourth description when you take Shivabhyam Yam Natihi. To the divine couple, I do my namaskaram. And what type of divine couple? Bhakteshu prakatita palabhyam. Fourth definition. And the fifth definition, Astoka Tribhuvana Shivabhyam. Shivabhyam, that Shiva and Parvati, who bring auspiciousness. See, when you look at Shiva, Shiva is the masculine form. The Devi is also called as Shiva Ākāranta. Okay, this Shiva. The 53rd Nama in Lalita Sahasranama is Shiva. That is the name of the Devi. So the masculine is Shiva and the feminine is Shiva. And what does this show? This show abheda between them. This is the aspect of Brahma Swarupam. When you say Astoka Tribhuvana Shivabhyam, that Shiva signifies oneness, non-separation, non-difference. And that is abheda. Bheda is difference. So this abheda is a state of unity, oneness. And it denotes the ultimate non-dual nature of the reality. Inseparable nature of the reality. So there is an artist. There is a human looking at the artist. The artist is absorbed in the creation. Whatever is trying to create is absorbed. The viewer is also absorbed in that. And between the artist, the viewer, and the creation, there is no difference. And that is how you understand oneness. Absolute absorption. So when you say Shiva, Shiva is absolute absorption. It is abheda, oneness, non-separation, non-dual nature of the reality. So Astoka Tribhuvana Shivabhyam means they fill our lives with abundance of auspiciousness. They fill the universe with this auspiciousness called this oneness, this unity. See, the universe would have collapsed if Shiva did not consume the poison, correct? This Ĺᶏ���ήᶏήᶁả, you know this story in Samudra Mathana. So this Visha is the anti-creation. So the ocean was churned, and the Visha, the poison appeared. And the fumes of the poison was so powerful, it would have destroyed the creation, including the Devas, the Asuras, the gods and the demons. And Shiva consumed it because he wanted to bring in auspiciousness into the creation. And that is the nature of Shiva. That's why we say Shiva is auspiciousness. And that Shiva brings auspiciousness to all the three worlds. They lavishly pour auspiciousness in all the three worlds. Astoka, when you say Astoka, completely, entirely. They pour the auspiciousness to what? Tribhuvana, Astoka Tribhuvana, all the three worlds. Bhuloka, Swargaloka, Pathala, Bhuvaha, Suvaha. That's another classification, Astoka Tribhuvana. And this is the fourth description when you say Shivabhyam Yam Natihi. Astoka Tribhuvana Shivabhyam. This fifth definition, right? Astoka Tribhuvana Shivabhyam. Then there is the sixth and the seventh definition, which is what? Hridi Punarbhavabhyam. Hridi Punarbhavabhyam Ānanda Spuradhanubhavabhyam. Bhavabhyam Ananda Spurat Dhanubhavabhyam. And that divinity called Shiva is residing in the heart of the worshipper, the bhakta, the devotee. Hridi Punarbhavabhyam. And Hridi Punarbhavabhyam residing as what? Ananda Spurat Dhanubhavabhyam. Ananda Spura Adhanubhava. Ananda Spura Adhanubhava. They reside in the heart of the devotees as Ananda. And that Ananda is available to the individual if the individual contemplates on them. Or conversely, if you contemplate on Shiva and Parvati in this way, your heart and the mind is filled with Ananda. When he says Spurana means shining. That Ananda is shining as a pulse in the mind, in the Hridayam. Spura is that pulse. Purana is shining. Ananda Spura Dhanubhavabhyam. Adhanubhava. Hridi is the mind. Hridi is Hridayam. Hridayam is the heart. In the sense, heart, the seat of the mind is the heart. That's why we say the mind is the heart. Hridi Punar Anubhavabhyam. This is a very interesting word to understand. What do you mean by Punar Anubhavabhyam? So this Ananda called Shiva, when you say Shiva, it also includes Parvati. Because that's why we say the Nama says Shiva and Shiva, Parvati and Shiva, the one. They keep appearing in the heart or in the mind of the devotees repeatedly. Punar Anubhavabhyam. Why repeatedly? Because look at the nature of the mind. The mind keeps wandering. Absolutely wandering. So you need to bring that mind back to the divinity now and then. Every time it goes out, you want to bring that mind back to the divinity. That's why Shankara here says Punar Anubhavabhyam. Again and again you are trying to bring the mind back into the divinity. And that's why he says that divine couple are appearing repeatedly in the mind, repeatedly in the heart. And this gives an illusion that they are reappearing again and again in the heart. Whenever the mind is turned inwards, they keep appearing again and again in the heart. Hridi Punaranubhavabhyam. Hridi Punaranubhavabhyam Ananda Spuradhanubhavabhyam. Ananda Spuradhanubhavabhyam. The mind is always filled with this happiness, this Ananda. Minds of people who meditate, not the ordinary minds. The minds of people who meditate on Shiva and Parvati in this form, their mind is always filled with Ananda. Me iyam natihi my namaskarams. Hridi punar anubhavabhyam ananda spurad dhanubhavabhyam me iyam natihi. So in this Dhyana Shloka, Shankara is putting Shiva and Parvati together. Jagatappitarau vande Parvati Parameshwarau. And he brings this out very beautifully, the essence of there's no more individuality here. It is essentially oneness of the individual with the divinity. Jiva Ishvara Swarupaikyam. So superficially they may look different, but essentially they're all one and the same. If you're absorbed in a art, somebody is sculpting, somebody is dancing, and the dancer is absorbed in the art. And if you're observing it, you get absorbed in that art too. Correct? Everything becomes one. So when you look at the creation in the same way, the creation is very beautiful, such a beautiful creation, it resembles an art. Every moment it is changing. There is intelligence in that art. That intelligence is that divine couple Parvati and Parameshwara. And I have a position in that art called the creation. And I become one with that. And that's how he brings out this oneness, this non-dual aspect very beautifully in this shloka, in this Dhyana shloka. So he looks at that Parameshwara in the divine couple Parameshwara and Parvati in 7 different aspects. When he says Shivabhyam is the divine couple, Parameshwara and Parvati. And they are described in 7 beautiful ways so that the mind can dwell on it, and that mind can be filled with auspiciousness. Kalabhyam Chodalankruta Shajikalabhyam Nijatapapalabhyam Bhakteshu Prakatita Palabhyam Bhavatu me. Shivabhyam Mastoka Tribhuvana Shivabhyam Hridipunar Bhavabhyam Mananda Spurad Danubhavabhyam Natiriyam. So when you read this shloka, divide this shloka into 7 aspects. Take this first one, right? Shivabhyam yam natihi. I am doing my namaskaram to Shiva. The Shiva and Parvati, the divine couple. Shivabhyam yam natihi. Then look at this description in 7 ways. As Kalabhyam, Choda Alankrita Shajikalabhyam, Nijatapa Palabhyam, Bhakteshu Prakatita Palabhyam, Astoka Tribhuvana Shivabhyam, Hridipunar Bhavabhyam, Anandaspurat Danubhavabhyam.
Kalabhyam Chudalankruta Shashikalabhyam Nijatapa Palabhyam Bhakteshu Prakatita Palabhyam Bhavatu me. Shivabhyam Astoka Tribhuvana Shivabhyam Hridipunar Bhavabhyam Ananda Spuradhanubhavabhyam Natiriyam.
And that is this Dhyana Shloka. Very beautiful Dhyana Shloka. It will take you into meditation. Now he begins the second Shlokam. And the second Shlokam begins with Galanti Shambho Tvacharita Saritaha Kil Bisharajo Dalanti Dikulya Saranishu Patanti Vijayatam Dishanti Samsara Brahmana Paritapopashamanam Vasanti Machetho Hrida Bhuvi Shiva Ānanda Ĺᶏ���ήᶏήᶏ. So here in this composition, Shankara Bhagavad says, He Shambho, Tvacharita Saritaha Galanti Kilbisharajo Dalanti Dikulya Saranishu Patanti Samsara Brahmana Paritapo Pashamanam Dishanti Machetho Hridabuvi Vasanti Shiva Ānanda Ĺᶏ���ήᶏήᶏ Vijayatam.
Galanti Shambho Tvacharita Sarita Kilbisharajo Dalanti Dhikulya Saranishu Patanti Vijayatam Dishanti Samsara Brahmana Paritapo Pashamanam Vasanti Maccheto Radhabhuvi Shiva Ānanda Ĺᶏ������ήᶏ.
So when you say Shiva Ānanda Ĺᶏ������ήᶏ Vijayatam, see, Shiva Ānanda Ĺᶏ������ήᶏ Vijayatam. See, let the mind be filled with Shiva Ānanda. Let the mind become a pond or a receptacle to hold the Brahmānanda, which is Shiva Ānanda. So Shiva Ānanda Ĺᶏ������ή偏 Vijayatam. So when you look at this shloka has got many adjectives. When you say Galanti, Dalanti, Patanti, Dishanti, Vasanti, that qualifies Shiva Ānanda Ĺᶏ������ή偏. So Shiva Ānanda Ĺᶏ������ή偏 Vijayatam. So many adjectives here. Just imagine, visualize, there are hundreds of small individual streams. If you take a river like a Ganga, it has got so many streams which join the river, isn't it? Hundreds of small individual streams or or tributaries, they gather all their energies and form a great river called Ganga. Right? And look at the nature of the river. The rivers are just flowing, they don't have any purpose. And they go and join an ocean. And what purpose does the ocean have? The ocean too doesn't have any purpose. Only the human being tries to find a purpose. There is nothing called purpose anywhere in the creation. It is simply there. Life simply is. That existence is simply there. It doesn't have a purpose. And that what we call as purpose is made by the humans, isn't it? Every purpose is created by man or woman or human. I am not saying it is purposeless, right? It is simply transcendental. It doesn't have a purpose, nor it doesn't have a non-purpose. It doesn't have a meaning, nor it has no meaning. It is simply transcendental. It simply is. Right? That's how it is. And when you look at this nature, what do we hear about Shiva? We hear so many stories about Shiva. So many stories, isn't it? And you don't want to find a purpose in those stories. The stories are simply there. Simply there. And the stories are transcendental. They don't have meaning, nor they have no meaning. They neither have a purpose, nor they have no purpose. Like how the creation is. The rivers are simply flowing. And we come and put a purpose there. And there are so many stories about Shiva. And each story of Shiva is like a tributary of a river. When all the tributaries join and merge into a river, it becomes a torrential river. Torrential river. So many stories about Shiva. See, in हालास्यमहात्म्यम्, it's the text, the Puranic text, हालास्यमहात्म्यम्, it describes 64 divine leelas of Shiva, which is told by Parvati to Skanda. And Skanda later tells this or instructs Agastya Muni, and who subsequently passes on this knowledge to the other sages. And this place called Madurai in South India is historically known as Halasya or Halasya Kshetram, which essentially means, the direct translation of Halasya Kshetram is a place of divine nectar. And the Shiva's got 5 functions, 5 cosmic functions, and the 5 cosmic functions are depicted in that Nataraja as Srishti, Sthiti, Samhara, Tirobhava, and Anugraha. And the 5 functions of Shiva are Panchanana. Shiva is known as Panchanana. That's why Shiva is seen in Shiva is shown with 5 faces, 5-fold aspect of Shiva. And the Shiva Purana states that 5 faces, the Panchanana, what are they? Ishana, Agora, Sadyojata, Tatpurusha, Vamadeva. And every face is in a particular direction. The Ishana is upward facing. Agora is southern facing. Sadyojata is facing on the west side. Tatpurusha on the eastern side. Vamadeva towards the north. So 5 faces of Shiva. And out of these 5 faces of Shiva, from each face appeared 25. Out of the 5 faces of Shiva, 25 aspects of Shiva appeared. 5 aspects per face. So totally 25. You can also visualize this way. From this Shivalingam manifested 25 different forms of Shiva. And these 25 forms of Shiva are known as Mahadeva Murti. Mahadeva Murtis. Panchavimshati Murti. 25 forms of Shiva appearing. 5 forms from each face of Shiva. And these are described in detail in Shaiva Agamas. And they form the basis for the Puranas and the Itihasas, in which, the Shiva's divine play, divine Leela is explained with lot of narratives, numerous narratives. And when you go to the temples, especially the southern Indian temples, you can see all the forms of Shiva in the main Gopuram, all these images. You can also see the images on the walls of the temple, the inner walls, the outer walls, filled with all these images, this Panchavimshati Murti. And each form has got a attire, and the form is adorned with a particular type of ornaments. They have got a particular type of postures. They hold a particular type of weapon. And many other accessories are associated with each form. And these are described in detail in the Shaiva Agamas. You will be very familiar with some of the forms like Bhikshatana, Chandrasekhara, Somaskanda, Kalari, Gaja Samhara Murti, Tripurantaka, Nataraja, Lingodbhava, Dakshinamurti. All these are forms appearing out of the 5 faces of Shiva. And each form has got a particular Leela associated with it. It doesn't end there. The Shaiva Agamas also talk about 64 Leelas of Shiva, which are considered very sacred. There are a lot of stories associated with them. So all this highlight that Shiva's grace, compassion, his playfulness, and his powerful nature, guiding the worshippers, guiding the meditators. So 64 Leelas of Shiva. And originally, there was also 64 Jyotirlingas. And out of the 64 Jyotirlingas, 12 Jyotirlingas are considered very important. And that's what people visit every time. So many stories are associated with Shiva. Like how, the individual streams of water, the tributaries, they come in hundreds and join this beautiful, or form this beautiful river called Ganga, a torrential river. So many stories of Shiva, and each story is like a tributary. And you don't want to make any meaning out of it. They are transcendental. You shouldn't look for purpose in those stories. They are not just mythology. See, there's nothing called myth in our culture. There's nothing called myth or mythology. And there is so much of evidence. Whether you look at geographically, geographically, each story will be associated with a particular location. Astrologically, you'll have references. Botanically, you'll have references. Look at a bilva leaf that is associated with Shiva. Botanical references, biological references, geographical references, astrological references. On all this, add to the authenticity of the stories, authenticity of the Puranas. And that Shiva, that Sadashiva, assumes a form every time to manifest a certain power, manifest a certain expression, and that expression is a secret, a sacred secret. And there's countless stories about Shiva, representing his divinity, his complex nature. Some of the stories may be paradoxical. A Shiva as a destroyer, Shiva as a creator, Shiva as a sustainer, Shiva as a sannyasi, an ascetic, Shiva as an householder. So many stories. Story about Nilakanta, how Shiva's throat became blue. Kama Dahana, how Kameshwara was burnt. Then the descent of Ganga, the birth of Ganesha, and the destruction of Daksha Yajna. Nataraja, Somaskanda, stories of Shiva related to Ravana, Stories of Shiva related to Rama, Krishna, so many stories. And each story is like a tributary of a river. When all the tributaries join and merge into a river, it will be a what? Torrential river. So in this shloka, Shankar Bhagavad says, Hey Shambho, Hey Bhagavan. Shambho, Sham is auspiciousness, one with auspiciousness, one who blesses the person, the worshipper with auspiciousness, with happiness, and that is the nature of Shambho. So here he says, Hey Shambho. Hey Shambho, there are so many great stories about you, flowing like tributaries of the river. Tvat charita saritaha. Tvat charita saritaha. When I say Tvat, your charita, glorious charitram, glorious stories. Saritaha. Saritaha means something which flows, a river that flows, a stream that flows. Saritaha. Shambho Tvat charita saritaha. And what does this flow do to the person? When water flows, it washes away everything. It washes away your ignorance. Especially the torrential river, when it flows, it washes everything away, isn't it? Galanti, dalanti, kil bisharajaha. So when you say galanti also means flowing. When you say galati, it means trickling. So here it is galanti, which is flowing. The river is flowing down, and when the river flows down, what happens? It creates a lahari, Shiva Ānanda lahari. Dalanti is washing away. Dalanti kilbisharajaha, particles of dust. The particles of dust indicate the ignorance. The mind is filled with so much of ignorance, isn't it? And just imagine the stories are coming like a torrential river. They washes away the ignorance, the dust particles which are occupying the mind. So the river has a strong current to wash away this ignorance. And this is Chitta Shuddhi. The flowing water always washes the dust. Correct? So Galanti, Dalanti, Kil Bisharajaha. Patanti Dikulya Saranishu. Dikulya Saranishu. When you say Patanti means falling down, flowing through, falling. Patanti. And where is it flowing through? It is flowing through the intellect. Because you're listening to the story, and the stories of Shiva are filling the mind. Dikulya Saranishu. See, when you say Dikulya Saranishu, it represents the aspect or the channels of intellect. The rivers are flowing through many channels. And one channel is the buddhi. Di is buddhi. Kulya means a channel. Dikulya. Di is buddhi. It's flowing through different channels. And one channel is the buddhi. The intellect is the channel through the river flows. And when the river flows through that channel called the buddhi, the mind, what happens? It steadies the mind. It washes away the dust of the mind. And the mind is filled with what? Ignorance. Kama, krodha, lobha. When you say kama is desire, krodha, anger, lobha, greed, moha, delusion, mada, ego, ahamkara, matsarya, jealousy. And such a mind always wanders in samsara. And this is what he calls prarabdha. And it washes away the prarabdha. It washes away all the ignorance. And when it washes away, what happens? That mind reflects the divinity. The buddhi reflects the divinity. Because the mind is so clean. And what should happen? See, the water shouldn't just flow away, correct? The water is flowing. The water is now cleaning the mind. And it flows away only for the dust to resettle in the mind. It shouldn't happen that way, isn't it? The mind should become a pond, like a dam. What happens? We build dams, isn't it? In the rivers, so many dams we build. Why? We want to store the water. We don't want to waste the water. So the mind should become a dam, a pond, to store this torrential auspiciousness. And now the mind is filled with Shiva Ānanda Lahari. It becomes Shiva. The mind takes the form of what it is filled with. Correct? The mind takes the form. When you look at the flower, you know it is a flower. Mind takes the form of a flower. When something disturbs you, right? Anger disturbs you. The mind takes the form of the anger. Here the mind takes the form of Shiva Ānanda Lahari. It is filled with divinity, and the Shiva's glory is this river. And the ignorance or the dust particles, and the mind becomes a pond. And this is how Shankara Bhagavad-pada describes in this shloka. This aspect is called as Rupaka Alankara in the composition. Rupaka Alankara, it's again a figure of speech. What happens here is, when you say Rupaka Alankara, normally when you want to describe something, you take an upamana, something through which you can compare. You can say this orange, somebody has not seen an orange. You say the orange is like an apple, same shape you will say. So some sort of comparison. So there is upamana and upameya. So two components of comparison. It's just a metaphor in the literature, in the composition, especially in texts like Kavya Shastra. You use a lot of upamana and upameya. So upameya is the subject being described, and upamana is the object or a concept used for comparison, just to aid the understanding. So the river here is used as the rivers in the stories of Shiva. The river is used to understand the stories of Shiva. Then you say, don't make any meaning of the rivers. The rivers are simply flowing. They're transcendental. Rivers don't have any purpose. The ocean doesn't have any purpose. We only impose purpose as a human. And that is the nature of the creation. Likewise, look at the stories of Shiva. Don't try to gather meaning from it. It is transcendental. No meaning. Don't derive meaning out of the stories. They don't have any purpose. They don't have even no purpose at all. You can't say it doesn't have a purpose. Or you cannot say it has a purpose. At the same time, you cannot say it doesn't have no purpose. It is beyond both. It is transcendental. And let this mind be filled with Shiva Ānanda. And when the mind is filled with Shiva Ānanda, what will we recollect every moment? What will the mind recollect every moment? It is Shiva Ānanda alone. Otherwise, the mind is filled with so many dust particles, the vāsanās. And mind keeps shifting from one vāsana to the other. And in a lake filled with Shiva Ānanda, when you dip your hand to drink, what will you drink? You will drink Shiva Ānanda alone. Imagine a lake completely filled with Shiva Ānanda. When you lower your hand to drink, whatever point you touch the lake, it is Shiva Ānanda alone. That Shiva Ānanda alone will rise within you. So too with the mind. The mind is full of this auspiciousness. Every thought, every recollection, every moment is nothing but Shiva Ānanda. And whatever you express will be Shiva Ānanda. Whatever you think will be Shiva Ānanda. See, there is a story about Appaya Dikshitar. Okay, we'll talk about a little bit in other shlokas as well about him. He's one of the composers. He lived around the 15th century. He was a great devotee of Shiva, especially in the Advaitic tradition. And he wanted to test his depth of devotion to Shiva. What he did was, this is just a story, okay? He consumed this Unmata fruit. I don't know the English name. It is called as Unmata fruit, which induces a state of intoxication. See, when a person is intoxicated, what will come out of his mouth? What will he blabber? So he wanted to test himself. If the mind is filled with unnecessary things, the vāsanās, and that's what will come out of the mouth. So in Appaya Dikshitar's case, what came out of the mouth after he consumed this Unmata fruit was about Shiva, through which he composed. There is a composition called Unmata Panchashat. Unmata Panchashat, which is a set of 50 verses, 100 verses Shatakam, and this is a set of 50 verses he composed. So Unmata means madness, craziness, insanity is Unmata. So this is called as Unmata Panchashat. So this particular plant, it grows about 2 meters tall, and they have a fruit which is very spiny, capsule like fruits. They are also called as thorn apples, if I'm right. Thorn apples. Sometimes in English it is called as mad apple, devil's trumpet. All these are names which goes for this particular fruit, and very poisonous, very psychoactive. And they got a lot of problems. Sometimes in the Ayurvedic medicine they use it for certain illnesses like asthma, cough. They use an element of it. So Unmata. So he consumes Unmata, and what comes out of his mouth is a composition on Shiva. And Bhairava is also known as Unmata. There is a form of Bhairava called Unmata Bhairava, which represents divinity, ecstasy, joy, Ananda. There is a Shastram called Unmata Bhairava Tantra Shastram. So we'll come back to this shloka. So Samsara Brahmana Paritapopashamanam Dishanti. Samsara Brahmana Paritapopashamanam Dishanti. Suffering caused by samsara. Samsara Brahmana. Brahmana is delusion of samsara. Paritapa is suffering. And upashamanam is you want to neutralize this suffering. So samsara brahmana paritapo pashamanam dishanti vasanti. It says vasanti. The vasanti means what? Vasanti is residing, staying. Mat cheto hridi bhuvi. Mat cheto hridi bhuvi. When you say cheta, when you say cheto is the mind. Hrida bhuvi. When you say hrida bhuvi, it indicates the pond. Mat cheto hrida bhuvi. So that auspiciousness of the divinity Shiva, which is coming and flowing through various stories, let them reside in my mind permanently. Vasanti, Dishanti, Vasanti, Shiva Ānanda Lahari. This Ananda, this Brahmānanda, let it rise in my mind, Vijayatham. Let my mind be filled with Shiva Ānanda. The mind, when you look at the nature of the mind by nature is pure. Absolutely pure. When there is a small disturbance in the mind, the thoughts arise. That disturbance arises as a thought in the mind as Nama Rupa. Like how waves are rising out of a lake. And this is Chitta Vritti. And the Chitta Vritti alone appears as Manas, the Indriyam, and the Jagat, the world. Small disturbance in the Chitta. Objects and the instruments to perceive the objects appear. And the Chitta in the undisturbed state is Asanga, Nirvishayam. And the Chittam becomes the Atma Swarupam. And when the Chittam is still, without any disturbances, it doesn't stand apart from the divinity. The Chittam, that mind itself becomes divinity. It takes the form of divinity. Only the Namarupa vrittis alone make the Chittam appear different from the divinity. Otherwise, the original state of that mind, that Chittam, is Nirvikalpa Swarupam. And here, Shankara Bhagavad says in this composition, let that mind be filled with Shivananda Lahari through all these stories of Shiva. Many, many stories, countless stories. flowing across, flowing from every direction, like tributaries of the river. They join together, they form this torrential river. Let the torrential river flow through my mind, wash away all the ignorance. When that ignorance is washed, the chittam becomes so clean. That is the original state of the mind. And that state of the mind is nirvikalpa swarupam. And let this river not just flow away after washing the ignorance. Let the mind become the pond to hold the water permanently like a dam. And every thought appears, everything which appears in that mind is Shiva Ānanda alone, nothing else. And that is the summary of this shloka. Very, very beautiful shloka. He Shambho Tvacharita Saritaha is river. Galanti Kil Bisharajo. Dalanti Dikulya Saranishu Patanti Samsara Brahmana Paritapopa Shamanam Dishanti Macchedo Hridabuvi Vasanti Shiva Ānanda łaɦᶖ॑ဗᶏήᶏήᶏዓả.
गलन्ति शम्भो त्वच्चरितसरितः किल्बिषरजो दलन्ति धीकुल्या सरणिषु पतन्ति विजयताम् दिशन्ति संसारभ्रमणपरितापोपशमनम् वसन्ति मच्चेतो हृदभुवि शिवानन्दलहरी.
That is the shloka about. So we'll stop here. We'll continue in the next session. So enough for today. Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavad Shankaram Ĺᶏ்ஹᶏ Hari Om Ji.
Hari Om. Hari Om.